And thank you for joining us. We'll begin momentarily. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another JINSA War update. I'm Blaise Misztal, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm honored, as always, to be joined by two of our Israeli colleagues, JINSA Distinguished Fellow and retired IDF Major General Yaacov Amidror, former National Security Advisor of Israel, and the Julian and Jenny Josephson, Senior Vice President for Israeli Affairs, IDF retired Major General Yaacov Ayish, formerly the IDF Head of Operations and Defense Attaché in Washington. Thank you both for joining us, especially so late at night. You will be in the future here momentarily talking to us from Friday while we're still on Thursday. Given that it is so late, we'll maybe try to keep today's conversation to 45 minutes or so. But those who are watching us, thank you for joining in the audience. If you have any questions for Generals Amidror or Ayish, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature, and I'll put them to our generals towards the end of the 45-minute session. But General Amidror, let me start with you, because you were quoted yesterday in an article in the New York Times, an article which said that U.S. officials have claimed that Israel has accomplished everything it can accomplish militarily in Gaza, and your quote took exception with that claim and that assumption. So could you tell us a little bit both about why you think that Israel can still accomplish more, but also why are U.S. officials saying this now, do you think?
Why the U.S. officials are saying what they said, which I don't agree with, is I think that I can understand. They want to achieve the ceasefire. For them, there is kind of an assumption that a ceasefire in Gaza will be the beginning of a new modern Middle East in which the Israelis will open the way for another kind of relations with the Palestinians, maybe leading to an independent Palestinian state. The Saudis will join in and have relations with the former relations with Israel. And the Middle East will be a different Middle East, and maybe the Iranians will be convinced by that not to be so aggressive. With all due respect, I think that the Americans are making a huge mistake. The Iranians will not change their attitude, and they continue to be aggressive, whatever will be the relations with Israel and Saudi Arabia and Israel, the Palestinians. The Palestinians is not the reason that the Iranians are aggressive. The Palestinians are the excuse of the Iranians. And if the Palestinians will, some Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority will have relations with Israel, that will not stop will not even reduce the intensive of radicalism flow from Iran, and not the aggressiveness of the Iranians in the Middle East. I think that the Americans do not understand Iran at all. It's not the first time that I'm saying it. They believe that the Iranians are aggressive because of the Palestinian issue, and if that will be solved, so the Iranians will change their attitude. It's not connected at all. But I think that here the mistake is even bigger. What they want us is to stop now in Gaza, because the achievements in Gaza are fantastic. The IDF achieved almost everything, much better than the one assessed by the Americans themselves. And I think it's a huge mistake. Why it is a huge mistake? The question of Hamas in Gaza is not about the fact that the real question is not if Hamas is weak now or weaker or very weak in Gaza. It is true, Hamas is very weak in Gaza. No one asked what will be the reaction of Hamas in Gaza for the assassination of Haniyeh or or Mohammed Def. It was clear that they are not relevant anymore. The real question is not if Hamas is weak or if the IDF achieved huge achievements in Gaza. The IDF did, and Hamas is very weak. The real question is, if the IDF is pulling out from Gaza, how strong will be Hamas a year from now, or 2 years from now? And the answer is that I don't know how strong Hamas will be, but Hamas for sure will be in a situation in which it will prepare the next 7th of October. Will it be a year from now or 2 years from now? I don't know. It very much depends on the circumstances on the ground. But for sure, in a year from the minute that the IDF will pull out of Gaza, the preparation will begin. How long it will take the preparation to be matured, and the second 7th of October will be on the will be done by Hamas. I don't know. So IDF should not retreat from Gaza, not because Hamas is strong, because Hamas is very weak, but this is the only way to keep Hamas weak. No other one will do the job to clean Gaza from all the remnants of Hamas, and to keep Hamas weak enough that someone will have the ability to take responsibility for the civilian side of Gaza, and the IDF will feel that it has enough freedom to maneuver into Gaza in and out whenever will be needed. Because what we want to achieve in Gaza is not a weaker Hamas, not even very weak Hamas. What we want to achieve in Gaza is a situation in which no one in Gaza can build military capabilities that will allow it in the future to attack Israel, either by kinetic fire, by missiles, rockets, mortars, and so on, or by another strike into Israel like the 7th of October. What we want to have is that the communities around Gaza will have the ability to come back and to build something for permanent life when they are, where they are, without being afraid from someone in Gaza. And for that, the IDF should stay in Gaza. How long? We need another 2 to 3 months for intensive operations. We will end after that to dismantle Hamas. And then we need a year for the mopping up process to clean Hamas to clean the Gaza Strip from all the remnants. Then it's the day after in which we have to find someone as a partner to take responsibility for the civilian life and to reconstruct Gaza. And the IDF will remain the only responsible for destroying anyone who has any attempt to build military capability that might harm Israel. This is the situation. This is why I think the American officials are strongly wrong. I can understand why, but I don't agree, not with the argument and not with the consequences of the argument.
If I may shade some lights and give some colors to what General Amidror just mentioned. You know, in the last few days, almost on a daily basis, the IDF forces in the area of Rafah, on the Philadelphia axis, on the Netzarim corridor have killed dozens of terrorists, more than a few hundreds in the last week. Those few hundreds came from somewhere. If we will take the infrastructure as an example, we have demolished more than 50 tunnels along the Philadelphia axis till now. I wish I could elaborate on it, but certain things that we have exposed in the last week showed us that there is a lot of work that has to be done without really cutting the lines of supply, the source of oxygen, the source of armament for Hamas via the Philadelphia axis, cutting it, literally cutting it, stopping it. You know, they will have the ability tomorrow to build, to rebuild themselves. And when you are connecting that to the fact that Sinwar is still alive, and some of their leadership is still alive, they will have the ability with resources from the outside to rebuild themselves quite fast. And it's impossible for the IDF nor the Israeli government to leave the mission open. We have to defeat Hamas, dismantle Hamas, literally eliminate its military capabilities. And this is without elaborating on the day after who is going to control the Gaza Strip, who is going to manage the Gaza Strip, who is going to distribute the humanitarian support coming in to the Gaza Strip, and by that gaining control on the civilian different elements inside the Gaza Strip.
Thanks, General Ayish. And I was going to ask you operationally about the tunnels that were destroyed in recent days and whether there is confidence that the IDF has now been able to cut off Gaza from Egypt, from the tunnels, or if there's still more work to be done to find additional tunnels. What is the status of the Philadelphia Corridor right now?
Well, a lot was done already, a lot was exposed already, but at the same time, we are still in the phase of exposing some others and demolishing it. And again, we are talking about different type of tunnels. There are those that were used, for small armaments to be moved from Sinai Peninsula into the Gaza Strip, but we have found also serious, wide tunnels, well fortified, well secured, with communications, with cables, with rails that allow them really to mobilize serious and heavy hardware from one side to the other. And there are those that we haven't exposed yet, and we know that. And we know that our intelligence, and this is an issue of the IDF and our intelligence. And we know that our intelligence was not good enough in terms of knowing about all those tunnels in the different levels, in the different depth at that area. So just the Philadelphia axis, to my opinion, is a serious operational issue that we will have to address not only today, but also in the day after. Because assume that we have found most of the tunnels, if not all of them, and demolished them. We have to make sure that they don't have the ability to rebuild something like that without us knowing about it, stopping it. And with that, let me imply on the day after. The day after should allow us, to eliminate imminent risks and growing risks while they are very small. We will have to address it. Otherwise, we are going to allow the same things that have happened in the last decade.
I know that the status of the Philadelphia Corridor was one of the things that was being negotiated with the Egyptians and as part of sort of day after plans, with one question being whether Israeli forces remain there, and another question being what sort of technology or what sort of systems are put in place to try to prevent future tunnels from being built. Can you tell us anything about the status of those negotiations or planning for what will be the future of the Philadelphia Corridor to prevent what you just talked about, General Ayish?
I can talk about the operational status, and I can talk about the options for the day after. And I think regarding the status, there is some more work that has to be done. Although it's only 14 kilometers, around 10 miles, not more than that, it is solvable. It's a matter of time and forces and resources, and we have those, and we have the capability, and we can finish it. But we have to secure the day after. And for that, there are few ways. One is, and I'll be very sensitive here, an option of IDF forces fully deployed, continue to secure the Philadelphia axis with technology that we have fully deployed along that axis. The other option is doing it bilaterally, us and the Egyptians. And our history is something that someone can criticize. We could have done it better. Definitely now that We have found many tunnels that we were not aware that they were there. The third option is something similar to the technology that Israel have deployed along the border with Gaza, but instead of using it only between us and the Gaza Strip, deploy something equivalent with the US support between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. And then you would have immediately the question, who is going to monitor it? Because without constant monitoring, this obstacle, technological obstacle, has no meaning. Someone have to eliminate a threat once you identify it, as we were doing under the ground and not very well above ground with the Gaza Strip. So these are basically the three options. The US is a key player here, together with Egypt, and I'm sure that it will be part of the future arrangement, but there is much operational work that has to be done in order to get there.
Can you tell us about ongoing IDF operations in the rest of Gaza? Sort of what is the status of Rafah and then operations in the central and northern parts?
I'll start with the general broader picture. The broader picture is that now we have far more freedom of action in the Gaza Strip. And what we are doing in this phase is by gaining intelligence and creating new intelligence via interrogations and many other meanings that we are using. We are creating new intelligence, new understanding, new insights, and via those facts, we are directing the forces. That's why you would find forces right now in the area of Khan Yunis. You will find forces along the Netzarim corridor working north and south to that corridor. And when we are identifying an imminent threat, either a human threat or an infrastructure that is about to be built or to be used, we are attacking those as well. So you would find that along the whole Gaza Strip, the IDF is not only active in Rafah, Philadelphi axis, Netzarim corridor, and the area of Khan Yunis right now. In few days, you would find that everything has transformed into other pockets in other areas. Everything is intelligence driven. And that's basically this phase. That's why we are allowing ourselves to identify and to eliminate so many terrorists. Take just the examples of the schools that were used as shelters for terrorists, and we published the names, not only names, but also pictures in terms of, at the beginning, 19, and then another 10 or 15 names that were hiding in this mosque or school. It's a clear proof to this concept that is applied. And as I said, there is much to be done.
Thank you, General Ayish.
If I made one remark, look, we didn't finish yet the job, not in the Philadelphi Corridor, as was mentioned by General Ayish, and not in Rafah. And we are pushing there slowly, because the underground system is unbelievable, equipped and complicated. And we are doing it on the ground and under the ground, and it will take, I don't know, few weeks or 1 month to keep the dismantling of the system in Rafah and around Rafah. And I don't know how long in the Philadelphia Corridor, as was mentioned by General Ayish. We were surprised by some of the evidence which had been found there. So I don't know if you saw the picture of a truck going in one of the tunnels. So this area should be taken into very serious continuation of our operation if we want to dismantle the whole system there in the south. It will take time.
Let me turn now, if I can, to the ceasefire negotiations that happened today. General Amidror, I don't know if you can tell us anything about how the negotiations went.
We don't know how the negotiations are going there. What we know is that there is two obstacles from our point of view. One, we are not ready to give the open door to Hamas in the Philadelphi Corridor. If that door will be open, as was mentioned by General Ayish, we will lose a huge percentage of our achievements. And with the time, it will allow the Hamas to regroup and to achieve its military capability. We understand the smuggling from the other side of the corridor was huge. So this is one issue, and as was mentioned by General Ayish, we want to find a way how we can monitor the whole corridor, and it's only 14 kilometers. The other issue is about the Netzarim corridor, which is separating the north from the south, or from the center and the south, and the demand of Hamas to open it. And what we want, a kind of a monitoring system which will allow us to identify who is a terrorist, which we don't want to let them go to the north. The north of the Gaza Strip is so close to Sderot, which is the main city near the border with Gaza, and other communities, that for them it's impossible to live with in such proximity from those who butchered us in the 7th of October. So what we want is to have some kind of monitoring system which will allow to see who is going to the north and to prevent it from those that we know are terrorists, and there are many. Today in the north, there are between 200 to 250,000 people. Before the war, there were more than 1 million people. So there is at least 1 million people that potentially might come back to the north, and we want to be sure that the terrorists are not going there. Because we understand if 1 million people will be there, the ability to identify the terrorists and to hit them without a huge collateral damage is almost none. And we have to take into account the Israelis who are living so close to Gaza, which has to feel more secure. It will be a huge challenge when the Palestinians are half a mile from their houses, from their home. So this is the main two issues. There are some other issues, but these are the main two issues relating to the situation in Gaza afterwards. And we have a guarantee from the Americans that if stage B will not be achieved, Israel can go back to the war. One problem that we have, that we don't have any list of those who will be released by Hamas. Theoretically, I think that they are speaking about 32 people. Theoretically, 32 can be bodies and one alive. There is no any commitment of Hamas to numbers of Israelis that they will release, and the segregation between bodies and alive Israelis. So these are kind of issues that are still negotiating. I don't know if Hamas wants the agreement. If Hamas wants the agreement will be achieved. We in Israel want to see the hostages back home. I'm very pessimistic about that, but I hope that I'm mistaken.
One of the things that the U.S. has been saying, at least, is that they see a linkage between the ceasefire negotiations and the other major geostrategic event that we're all waiting for, which is the potential for an Iranian retaliation for the death of Haniyeh. Do you see that linkage? Is getting a deal going to postpone or eliminate an Iranian retaliation? Are the two linked?
There was a report by Reuters, I think, that an Iranian source connected it. I don't know if it's part of the psychological warfare of the Iranians, or it is true, and they want to push for an agreement because that will let them to go down from the tree. I don't know. I think that the Hezbollah anyhow will try to retaliate. There is a difference between the assassination of Haniyeh by someone in Tehran and killing of number 2 in Hezbollah by Israel in Lebanon, in the Dakhya. For the Iranians, it's big honor problem. Someone under their own hospitality, which is very symbolic, was killed in the building which is supposed to be the Blair house of the Al-Quds forces. But Haniyeh itself is a Palestinian, which is not important, not to Hamas and not to the Iranians. The issue here is the fact that someone did it in Tehran, not just in Tehran, in this specific building. With Hezbollah, it's a different issue. Here, the guy was a very important part of the war machine of the Iranians, of the Hezbollah, of Hezbollah. He was very close to Nasrallah, maybe the closest friend or colleague of Hezbollah, of Nasrallah. And it was done, and Israel took the responsibility for this operation in the center of Hezbollah in the Dakhya. So this is something that, if I have to assess, I think that it will be harder for Hezbollah to postpone or to give up the retaliation than the Iranians. Both think that they should do something, but it will be easier for the Iranians to say, okay, there is an agreement, we don't want to violate the agreement is very important, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, the agreement might save Sinwar. If that would be the claim of the Iranians, they might be right.
Do you have a sense of why we haven't seen a retaliation yet? Is it a strategic decision to heighten the tension and anticipation and anxiety in Israel? Is it because they can't decide what to do?
I think it's a combination of all of that, and you have to remember that to decide from decision to launch, I don't know what they want to launch, but you need all the logistical preparations and operational preparation. It's not something that someone is making decision and Khamenei is calling someone and say, go, and within hour. It doesn't work like that. I think that for the Iranians to launch good amount of projectiles is an operation that they need the time for. In April, it took them, I think, 2 weeks before they launched it. Today, I think it's 2 weeks and 1 day or something like that. So if I'm right and the issue is logistic and preparation and so on, it's very close. If it is strategic decision, it can take, I don't know how long.
Speaking of preparations, General Ayish, could you give us a sense of Israel's preparations for this potential retaliation? What is Israel's state of readiness, and also what is its state of cooperation with the U.S. and other regional partners in trying to prepare?
Before addressing the preparations, I'd like to address another 2 key issues, mainly from the strategic perspective. One is Iran and Hezbollah. There is a linkage here that we are fully aware, between those two, it's quite clear that Hezbollah is the surrogate of the Iranian, as the Iranian proxy is on the verge of attacking. However, they have to consider very carefully what type of attack they are going to execute. Definitely, they are trying to avoid a full-scale war because they were not built for that. They were built for many years with billions and billions of dollars of investment for the D-Days in order to deter Israel from attacking the nuclear facilities in Iran. Once they will use these capabilities for this case as a retaliation, they might lose that card and they won't have it in the future. And it's quite clear to Nasrallah and it's quite clear to the Iranians. This is one element. Second element is the Iranians. It's not only a matter of logistics. They have seen what have happened in Yemen, and they are not. It's not clear to them what type of retaliation will be done by Israel, not only with Hezbollah, but also with them. Is it going to be a devastating attack on their economic assets or some other assets? So I think those question marks, together with the next element, which is the strategic deterrence by the U.S. In the region, play a very significant role. We didn't mention the U.S. Deployment and the U.S. CENTCOM coalition led by CENTCOM that was built here, not as it was in April 14. This is far more stronger coalition in many ways. So I'll leave for a second the strategic aspects of it and speak about the operational capabilities in terms of deterrence. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the US fighting for Israel. I'm talking about this coalition deterring and, in case of attack, defending or managing the joint architecture against all type of missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles towards Israel and maybe towards American forces. So at the end of the day, all of this become very serious and heavy considerations on the Iranians and Hezbollah threats. Having said that, we are not naive any longer, and we are taking all the measures in terms of readiness. Obviously, stretching our capabilities in terms of air and missile defense, Israeli capabilities, together with US capabilities, which are very significant in the area, in the region, in the Mediterranean, and elsewhere. And I would like to add some other elements. We have to bear in mind that nowadays, what we are doing in Gaza, we are doing with 1/10 of the forces that we were using in day one, first, second, or the third months. Those forces went up, trained, replenished, recover, and they are ready for their missions. With all the experience that they have gathered in the south, they are ready over there. And when I'm saying ready, I mean being ready for ground attack, because it's not only air and missiles, not only drones. It could be also a ground offensive by Radwan unit by Hezbollah. And the second element is ready according to the Israeli government instructions to go for a full offensive. What type of offensive? What type of strategic goals? What type of definitions? This is different questions. Definitely, it will be to remove the threats that will allow the Israeli residents of the north to be back to their villages, to their houses. This is something which is unacceptable. And it's quite clear that not only us aware to that, but also Hezbollah is aware that we are waiting for the right opportunity, and we will have to complete that mission by removing that threat from the southern part of Lebanon. We will have to do that. And that's basically the situation in terms of strategy, in terms of operational readiness. And days will tell what will happen.
Thank you, General Ayish, for that overview. Let me turn to some of the questions we got from the audience here in the next 10 minutes or so. Two questions related to the tunnels. One, a logistical one, which is, where did all the soil that was dug out to create the tunnels go? How was it hidden?
That's a great question.
And the other one was whether there's been any evidence of Egyptian government involvement with the arms transfers through the tunnels, or was it done without their knowledge?
Okay, I'll answer the first question. Let me remind you, Blaise, because you and our generals and admirals who have visited Israel in different delegations have seen the piles of gravel and cement, mainly after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, piled outside of Kerem Shalom, waiting for the Gazans to take it into Gaza, to rebuild the demolished houses. What they have done back then, and I'm sure that General Wald, who led one of the missions, remember that they were taking only the cement. Because when it comes to gravel, when it comes to the sand that they have to mix with the cement in order to create concrete, they had what they have excavated from the tunnels. And they reused it in order to fortify those tunnels. The rest was hidden by, again, mixing it and building it, some other stuff. And definitely they've done a very good work with that. Usually those hatches into those tunnels from where they excavated that sand were part of a mosque, part of a school, part of an hangar. So they were very well hidden, and that's how they hide those amounts of sand. Regarding the Egyptian, it depends to what period you relate. There are those assumptions talking about the Morsi period that was, for them, the years of prosperity, where they were allowed to take whatever they want and to import whatever they want from Egyptian Rafah, from the Sinai Peninsula into Gaza. There was the period that came after when Sisi came to power, and he have sealed most of the tunnels, but definitely not all of them. And there was the period where ISIS was very much involved in the Sinai Peninsula and having very strong ties into Gaza with Hamas. And until those ISIS cells in Sinai were eliminated, it seems like they were working very close together. And when you add on it corrupted cops in that side or the other, this is the results.
A question from Jack Kraft, which is, Israel has a full plate dealing with Iran's surrogates, but what's going to be done about Iran's ability to deliver nuclear weapon systems? We heard just this week that Iran's now working on detonators for a nuclear weapon. They seem to be getting closer and closer.
Amidror,
the issue of Iran is we understand that at the end of the day, this is the head of the snake and should be taken and neutralized. It is true that the Iranians succeeded to build a ring of fire around Israel, and Israel now dealing with the ring of fire and not with the one who created the ring of fire. We have here an opportunity. Very much depends on the reaction of the Iranians to the assassination of Haniyeh. But I think that Israel will focus first to finish how to finish the job in Gaza. And I explained at the beginning why I think it's very important. And then the challenge will be to decide if first to go with to deal with the Iranians or first to go to deal with the Hezbollah. Israel, at the end, it's a little country. The number of Israelis less than the number of people coming every morning to Manhattan and going out of Manhattan every evening. And not all the Israelis are taking the burden of the security and going to the IDF. If you go to this number of Israelis, it's somewhere around 6 million. That's all. And we have to to prioritize our efforts. We cannot do both at the same time, Hezbollah and Iran. And there is an argument within Israel. It's known. Those who are arguing that if you take the snake's ability to fight near Israel, then you break the ring of fire, which is close to Israel, then it will be much easier to deal with Hamas, with Iran, because you don't have to think all the time about those who might take you from Lebanon or from Gaza or, I don't know, the Houthis. And the first step was done. We are in the middle of towards the end of neutralizing Hamas as a threat to Israel. What we have to take care is how not to be in a situation in which they will build their capabilities in the future. After the assassination of Haniyeh, no one asked the question, okay, how Hamas from Gaza will react? Why? Hamas from Gaza in those days is not relevant as a threat to Israel. Yes, they can launch here and there some rockets and some missiles, but they are not in a situation to make another 7th of October. The main question that will be on the table after the first stage of the dismantling of Hamas will be ended within 2 months. Will we go first to the head of the snake or to the tail of the snake? Both of them are very problematic. By the way, I believe that if we go on Hezbollah, the Iranians will be very cautious not to risk Tehran. If we go to Tehran, probably the probability of involvement of Hezbollah is very, very high. So it's another element that we should consider, what is how to deal with those two problems, what is the sequence which is the right one, and who should be first. But we remember all the time the nuclear issue and how it is challenging Israel. By the way, many people that when I was in the National Security Council preached us that it is too early to attack the Iranians, there is time, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm saying, sorry, it's too late. You missed the point. And I remember that I said it to them then. I told them, if we don't do it now, when the time will come, you will tell us that it is too late. I'm not sure that it is too late, but we remember all the time that should be done somehow.
Let me end with one last question from Len Hodorkovsky, which is Israel getting the arms it needs from the U.S., or is there still a backlog and delays?
No, from what I hear from our people, the situation was changed. I don't know if we are getting everything. I'm sure that there are some elements in the list that the Americans either don't have to give us or they don't want. But I think the situation is totally different than it was when the argument was very high and blames went from one side to the Atlantic to the other. now our people feel much better about it.
Well, General Amidror, thank you. General Ayish, thank you, especially for taking the time so late in your day. I guess have a good morning at this point.
In our night,
I'll
not
say.
in our day, in our night.
In your night, yes. And thank you to everyone who joined in and watched. As always, please stay tuned to JINSA.org for our latest analyses and writings. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Blaise. Amidror,
Thank you.
toda.
Bye.
Laila tov.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat